It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
It's one of those walk-off editions of Rico Brogna as the New York Mets beat the Philadelphia Phillies again. They come back from 2-0 down, then they blow a lead, then they walk it off. And they not only walk it off, they walk it off against the closer I think all of us wanted them to acquire in Johan Duran. They do it with back-to-back base hits. And the New York Mets beat the Philadelphia Phillies for a second straight day. They continue to really own the Philadelphia Phillies. This goes back a while. They have owned them at Citi Field. They've really owned them everywhere. And now they've won 6 of 8 in the season series against Philadelphia. So one more win, whether it's in the finale of this 3-game series or any one of the 4 games in Philadelphia, would secure them the tiebreaker. Now, that only matters if they could tie Philadelphia and continue to erase this divisional deficit, which is now down to 5. It's still a long road. And so this isn't about the NL East right now. This is not about, are the Phillies going to blow the lead or the Mets going to win the division? You know what this was about? Quite simply, just the Mets winning another game. Just the Mets putting together what I like to call a, hey, we'll make up for you kind of performance. They make up for the fact that Sean Manaea can't get through the 5th inning. They make up for the fact that Gregory Soto, the clock may have struck midnight on him as he's had back-to-back bad outings. They make up for the fact that Pete Alonso had an absolute lollipop of a throw to Edwin Diaz in the 9th inning and almost killed him. And they make up for the fact that Ryan Helsley is a problem. Ryan Helsley is broken. And Carlos Mendoza did everything he could over the last couple of days to try to fix him. Let's put him in low leverage situations. One time it didn't work. The other time it did. The Met bench, the Met dugout gave the man basically a back massage after his shaky but effective 1-2-3 inning on Monday. They've tried everything with this guy. They even still play Hell's Bells. But Ryan Helsley imploded in this game. But here's the beautiful part. I mentioned all of those negative things. Despite all of those negative things, despite the fact that Manaea couldn't get through 5, despite the fact that Ryan Helsley tried to light the game on fire, despite the fact that Carlos Mendoza had a couple of, dare I say, questionable managerial decisions that we will get into, despite all of that, the New York Mets won anyway. And that's what I like to see. You are not going to play flawless games. You're not going to have games in which everything is perfect. Like, they'll happen once in a while. I shouldn't say they don't happen, but there are going to be days more times than not where it isn't perfect, where you've got to overcome mistakes. And what the Mets were able to do in taking game 2 of this 3-game series is they overcame a lot of mistakes. They overcame the fact that the offense over the first 4 innings couldn't do anything against Jesus Luzardo. They overcame the fact that other than the one explosion of the 5th inning, for the first 8 innings of this game, this offense didn't do much. They overcame the fact that Juan Soto came up at a big spot in the 8th inning and struck out looking. They overcame the Manaea stuff, the Soto stuff, the Helsley stuff, some of the Mendy stuff. And they won anyway. And I think to this evening, this incredible win against the Philadelphia Phillies, and I think to myself, what's different about the New York Mets? Is there something that's different about the New York Mets? And what I was able to see over the last 2 games against Philadelphia that I called out, quite frankly, after Sunday's loss to Atlanta, is that the glass jaw has disappeared over these 2 days. Think about that. They're down 3-0 in game 1. The offense looks completely limp against Christopher Sanchez. Kodai Senga gives up that back-breaking 2-run single, what felt like a back-breaking 2-run single to Alec Bohm. The offense doesn't take advantage of a miscue by Trey Turner in the 1st inning. And they responded. And you look at this game. They're down 2-0 after Gregory Soto comes in, walks Kyle Schwarber, gives up the base hit to Bryce Harper. They're down 2-0, and instantly Like, it took no time at all. The Met offense responds. In fact, the Mets, down 2-0 in the fifth inning, took the lead before the Phillies were even able to record an out. So we saw them respond right away with what they did in the fifth inning after going down 2-0. And then even better than that, after they blow a 5-2 lead and a 5-3 lead in the eighth inning on the Helsley implosion, even though they didn't respond immediately in the bottom of the eighth inning, Edwin Diaz was utterly brilliant. I'll get more to that later. But the offense responded in the bottom of the ninth inning, and they needed to. Because whether you were at Citi Field for this electric night or you were watching the game on TV the way I was, you knew with the state of this bullpen, you knew that if the Mets did not score in the bottom of the ninth inning, I don't care where the game's being played, their chances of winning this game diminished greatly. Now, the Philly bullpen was going to be tested too. Once Rob Thompson decided to go to Johan Duran in the ninth inning of this game, the odds are he wasn't going to be asked to get 6 outs. But you are looking at David Robertson probably coming in this game to pitch in a back-to-back. But outside of that, their bullpen was tapped as well. But when you think about the Met options, if this game went to the 10th inning, they really had 2, maybe 3 options. The maybes Brooks Raley. I'm not sure he was available. We haven't seen Brooks Raley on back-to-backs. So I'm going to assume that Carlos Mendoza wasn't going to make him available. So you're talking about Jose Castillo, who, like the candle, thank you, Jose, for what he did in game 1, but nobody's going to trust him in a tie game against this Philly offense. And then the other option is the man affectionately known by some in the Rico audience as Fat Thor, Ryan Stanek, to come into the 10th inning. So the Met bats needed to win this game in the bottom of the ninth inning against Johan Duran, and they did. So what I'm very happy about, encouraged about, is that the glass jaw that this Met team has possessed for a majority of this season, it was taken off. We saw responses, and I'm not sure if it's the Phillies that do it to them because, look, there's no denying the Mets played some great baseball against the Phillies. I mean, think about the one game they lost in the division series last year against the heavily favored, far superior Philadelphia Phillies. It was a game that the Mets came back in and almost won. The game where Mark Vientos hit one of the most underrated home runs in the history of the New York Mets because unfortunately they lost the game. That's the one time the Philadelphia Phillies beat them in that postseason series. You look at what's happened so far during these 8 regular season games. A sweep back in April. The Mets actually snapped their initial losing streak that started on June 13th with that Saturday afternoon or Saturday night shellacking of the Philadelphia Phillies the day we did the Rico with Carlos Mendoza. They did lose 2 out of 3 in that series, but they won a game during the height of their struggles. And now they've won the first 2 of this series with a great chance to sweep them with Nolan McLean on the mound in the finale. For whatever reason, and I'm not a believer it's matchups, though I guess some of it is matchups. Like, why do the Mets own the Philadelphia Phillies so far? I don't think it's an intimidation factor. I don't think it's overall a matchup factor. But you do see how Edwin Diaz is lights out against the Phillies' best hitters. The Kyle Schwarber thing is amazing, and it scares me every time because every time, and I remember this in the postseason when Diaz faced him after he walked the first 2 guys in the 9th inning of Game 4. I knew Schwarber's failures against Diaz, but I'm just worried it's going to end like in an implosion. He could be 0 for 11 with 13 strikeouts all you want. I always have this fear it's going to end with a Schwarber bomb, which, remember, the first pitch of that 9th inning, Kyle Schwarber just got a little bit ahead of and hit the ball what felt like 480 feet. But whatever the reason, the Mets keep beating this Philadelphia team. Now let's go through this game. Let me start with Sean Manaea. This was by no means a bad performance by Manaea. He basically put himself in trouble every single inning. First inning, gave up a 2-out hit to Bryce Harper. He got through it. Did pitch a 1-2-3 second inning. Gives up that leadoff double to Edmundo Sosa to start the 3rd inning. Shows great battling, great testicular fortitude, fighting through that spot, striking out Trey Turner, getting Kyle Schwarber to ground out. He puts himself in a tricky spot in the 4th inning, gets bailed out on a great throw by Luis Torrens on a Bryce Harper caught stealing. Gets a strike out of Castellanos. And then he gets into trouble in the fifth inning. And what really did him in was giving up that leadoff hit to Harrison Bader, who had a big impact on this game. You're facing the bottom of the order. Your pitch count is already at 67 going into the fifth inning, which basically means you need a quick inning if you want to get into the sixth inning, which would be a victory. I mean, at this point, getting into the sixth inning is like the ultimate victory with a Mets starter. But he gives up the base hit to Harrison Bader. He gets the big strike out of Edmundo Sosa. And then, and this is where the warning signs are flailing all over the place, that Sean Manaea may be cooked. He gives up what should have been a base hit up the middle, but Francisco Lindor makes this awesome headlong diving play. They actually almost turn a double play on Weston Wilson, but Lindor is able to get the force out at second. And you guys can hate me all you want for saying this, but I'm being real right now. As much as I want Sean Manaea to go deep into a game, like I want that to happen, I'm not sitting here accepting and being okay with starting pitchers going 4 or 5 innings. But can we have an honest conversation? He was done. When he gave up that smoked fielder's choice to the 9th place hitter, and now the Phillies have a runner on first, 2 outs, and Trey Turner is coming up. I'm not saying I was getting ready to take Manaea out right then and there. Like I was with Mendy on giving him another batter third time around. But if you're watching the game, don't you get the sense that he's flirting with disaster? So I know one of the retorts is, how can a pitcher go deep into games if you don't allow them to go deep into games? And while that's normally fair, I'm watching the same game you guys are watching. Sean Manaea is done. When he gives up the base hit to Trey Turner, and now Kyle Schwarber's coming up, you can tell me all day that he handled Schwarber in his first 2 at-bats. I'm ready to make the move. His pitch count wasn't necessarily the problem. It was at 90. So I don't think the pitch count was necessarily the reason that Mendoza had to take him out of the game. I think it was feel for the game. And sometimes you make a move that makes a lot of sense, that I agree with, that maybe you agree with, but the only way it's going to work is if the guy you bring in gets the freaking job done. So I agreed with Carlos Mendoza taking out Sean Manaea when he did. I even agree with going to Gregory Soto when he did. The problem is, and sometimes this is just the case. We have to say this on the Rico. We have to say this on WFAN. You got to say this to your friends. Sometimes it's not the manager's fault. It's the player's fault. Gregory Soto was acquired partially to get Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper out. I mean, think about that. When the Mets made the trade with the Orioles to acquire Gregory Soto, and they were so desperate to add a left-handed reliever, how many of you instantly said, hey, what are Gregory Soto's numbers against some of the prominent left-hand hitters on the Philadelphia Phillies and the Atlanta Braves and the Los Angeles Dodgers? I mean, don't you have to think about that and look at that? That's what I was thinking. I mean, the first thing I'm thinking about is, great, you got Gregory Soto. What's he here for? Well, he's here to get some of the better left-hand hitters out in the National League. And your division rival is the Philadelphia Phillies. So you damn right that's what he's here for. He's here to get these guys out. And so what happens? He comes in, he faces Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber puts together this long at-bat, and he draws a walk. Okay, not the end of the world, especially because Soto threw a wild pitch that allowed Trey Turner to go to second. So you had a base open. If you're going to walk Kyle Schwarber, at least go get Bryce Harper out. Can you do that? Well, he didn't. And it was soft contact, so I guess that's maybe where you can't get too mad at him. It's not like Bryce Harper hit the ball 111 miles per hour. But Gregory Soto is here specifically to get those 2 guys out. And he failed. Now, I give him like a little bit of credit because he struck out JT Realmuto to at least keep it right there at 2-0. But I thought the decision to go to Gregory Soto was wise. I thought who he went to, 5th inning, was wise. It just comes down to the fact that Gregory Soto couldn't have put away Kyle Schwarber and got into bad luck on a Bryce Harper bloop 2-run single. But I'm not mad at Mendy for it. It's just Soto didn't do his job. Bottom line. And really, I think what killed him, because you could look at the base hit and, like I said, say, it's soft contact, it's bad luck, what can you do? It's the wild pitch and the walk to Schwarber that really killed him. Now, those are the things that led to it. And as far as Manaea is concerned, I'm not as willing to do this with Kodai Senga, who I'm now worried about. I've said for a while, not worried, give more time. I'm getting worried about Kodai Senga. But I will give Manaea the benefit of the doubt, and David Stearns said this the other day too, that for Manaea, it's still a buildup of spring training. And he's partially right. Now, granted, this was Manaea's 8th start, and nobody's making 8 starts in spring training. Like, they're usually making 6 starts in spring training. I'm trying to remember. I'm so out of spring training thought. I'd have to go back and listen to Rico from March to get my sense on it. But usually you're not making 8 starts. But I get it. The guy missed half the season. So there is a part of me that still thinks, all right, give it more time. Manaea can go deeper into games. We know he's capable of it. We saw him do it last year. But until he's able to do it, until Carlos Mendoza believes that gives this team the best chance to win, these are big games. You got to manage it in the moment and in the inning and ask yourself, what's my best kind of spot? What's my best matchup to get me through this inning? And I agree with Carlos Mendoza. Once Manaea gave up the hit to Turner and there's 2 on and 2 out in the 5th inning, I didn't think Manaea was the best option. But Gregory Soto failed. Huascar Brazoban comes in. Not a surprise. And I'd say he sort of failed. Like, he comes in with a 5-2 lead. He puts a couple of guys on base. There's 2 on. There's 1 out. It's a 2-run game. This could have been far worse. So even though he gave up a run to make it 5-3, it wasn't a full implosion. And I think at that point in the game, as crazy as this is going to sound, I'm in the 6th inning. I'm not even sure how I'm mapping out the rest of this game. I'll trade the 1 run for the 3 outs. As crazy as that may sound, it was almost a victory to get out of the 6th inning up 5-3. I was hopeful that the Met offense could tack on after what they did in the 5th inning. They were unable to do that. They were given that gift when Lindor got hit by a pitch to start the 6th, but Soto popped up, Marte grounded out, Alonso flied out. They got mowed down in the 7th inning by Jose Alvarado. So unfortunately, the offense, who had a really good 5th inning against Jesus Luzardo, where they finally got to him. And, if I'm doing, usually I come up with a random name of a player on the team that we're facing and say, hey, if I'm doing the Helsley Mullins or if I'm doing the Charlie Hayes. But in the Philly case, the first guy I wanted to say was Rico Brogna. If we were doing the Carlos Ruiz or the Pedro Feliz or the, hey, who knew I was going to rhyme, or the Mitch Wild Thing Williams podcast, I'd go back to the 5th inning and say to Jesus Luzardo, bro, you have a 2-0 lead. You're ahead of Luis Torrens 0-2. You cannot hit him. Can't happen. Can't happen. And that break that the Mets got, and they've been hit a ton of times in this series. They were hit 3 times in game 2. They were hit another time in game 1. Like, the Phillies keep drilling them. But in the case of Torrens, that was the greatest hit batsman you could ever write up. Your 9th place hitter up. The count is 0-2. This is a huge lockdown inning for Luzardo, and he hands the Mets a base runner. And then it's a little bit about luck because the Lindor hit was a bloop. And I want to get to the Soto at-bat where he drove the run in to make it 2-1, and then Harrison Bader made the bad throw, so it set up 2nd and 3rd, nobody out, down by a run. Here's what's crazy about Juan Soto. So early this season, when Juan Soto was failing time in and time out with runners in scoring position, we tried to figure it out. We tried to answer the question, what's going on? And some people would theorize, I wouldn't agree with it. It's the pressure of New York. Never bought that. Guy played in the Bronx last year. Or it's the pressure of the contract. I didn't buy that either. One of the things I rested kind of my hopes on is that it was bad luck. Like sometimes it's just bad luck. And there was data to back that up, that there were a lot of hard hit balls that just unfortunately would be hit right at guys, especially balls on the ground. Now, that's not the excuse for every failure with runners in scoring position. I think back to that Dylan Lee strikeout from a few months ago. He struck out. Like there was no bad luck involved. When you strike out, you strike out. But I want to take you back to the fifth inning because this is the beauty of baseball. And this, I think, backs up the point that a lot of Soto's struggles were bad luck. So he comes up, 2 on, nobody out, down 2-0 in the bottom of the fifth inning. And Juan Soto, on the second pitch of the at-bat, smokes a ball up the middle. Now, off the bat, when you're watching the game at home the way I was for this game, you don't know. You don't know where guys are positioned. So you have that split second where you're not sure. Is that going to be a base hit? Is that going to be right at the shortstop? What is it going to be? And luckily, this went up the middle. Trey Turner made a headlong dive, and he missed it. It turns into an RBI single. Ball was hit hard. It turns into Harrison Bader making a bad throw and everybody advancing. If this was a month ago, that ball's hit right at Trey Turner, same speed, and it's a double play. And Soto's getting booed as he walks back to the dugout. But in August, late August of 2025, the worm is turning for Juan Soto. The numbers tell you what they do. Over the last month, he's hit over 300 with runners in scoring position. Now, he's not perfect. When he came up in the 8th inning of a tie game and he struck out looking, I'm sure there were many Met fans not thrilled about it. So he's not perfect. He's not hitting 3-run home runs. We're still waiting on that. But the luck is starting to go on his side. And so that ball a month ago is a double play. That ball on a Tuesday night at Citi Field goes up the middle, drives in a run, and then obviously the miscue gave the Mets second and third. So I do want to explain that with Juan Soto, and I think it backs up that it's not the contract, it's not the city. Sometimes it's bad luck, sometimes it's good luck. Look, the Mets had a lot of good luck in this game too. Francisco Lindor blooped the ball. Brett Beatty later on in this game in the 9th inning, which we'll get to, blooped the ball. But after that Soto hit, the Marte at-bat was tremendous. One of the most underrated at-bats of this game. It got Luzardo out. It loaded up the bases for Pete Alonso. And we've said some negative things about Pete. I think completely fairly. I mean, Pete hasn't hit. Pete had a very tough weekend in Atlanta. Like, he earned the net negative award. I'm not being a dick. I love Pete. I call it like it is. Well, he smoked the base hit in the first inning, which at least set up a rally that went nowhere. He had a leadoff hit in the 4th inning to start a rally. Unfortunately, that didn't go anywhere. But in the 5th inning, with the bases loaded and nobody out, he smokes a 2-run double to give this team the lead. So if you wanted the clutch Pete at bat, you got it. He ends up getting 4 hits in this game, and all of them, to varying degrees, were clutch hits. 2 outs, runner on first inning, 0-0. Base hit is putting together a rally. It may not be defined as a clutch hit, but you can't say it's meaningless. Base hit to start the 4th inning, putting a rally together to start, pretty important. 2-run double to give your team the lead in the 5th inning, pretty important. And then the base hit in the 9th inning that put the first 2 guys on base with nobody out. So hell of a day by Pete Alonso. And then Mark Vientos dunks in the RBI single. How great was that to see? Because even in a game in which Vientos went 1 for 3, struck out a couple of times, there were 2 at-bats that you love. The walk in the 1st inning, even though it didn't lead to anything, and then being behind in the count 1-2 and dunking that ball in a right field for an RBI hit that tacked on another run for the Mets as they built that 5-2 lead. And then even Brandon Nimmo. You know, you come up in a spot where get the ball out of the infield to get a run home. He got the ball out of the infield. So a really good pieces of hitting we saw from this Met offense in the fifth inning. Now let's get to Ryan Helsley, Tyler Rogers, and Mendy's bullpen handling. Hoff, by the way, was at the game. You have a good time tonight there, Pete?
Yeah, I guess if you like going up and if you like to be bipolar, then yeah, it was a great day. I mean, the mixed emotions were all over the place. I went with a bunch of kids too, and it was. Can I just tell you something? There was how many times were the bases loaded for the Mets?
Oh man, you want me to count on my scorecard? First inning, bases loaded, 2 outs for Brandon Nimmo. In the fifth inning, they loaded up the bases for Pete Alonso. And then I think, bases loaded for Alonso, and then bases loaded, obviously, in the ninth on the game winner for Nimmo. So 3 times.
So there were 3 times when the boys had to go to the bathroom.
Oh, come on.
I swear to God. And
those were the times?
Yeah. It was outrageous. It was one of. Thankfully, I didn't have to go the last time. One of my friends went with his kid, but they saw the walk off upstairs
my God! Oh my God!
It was. But anyway, dude, it was honestly the crowd was great. A lot of Phillies fans walked away disappointed, so that always makes me feel good.
Oh, no doubt. Good to see the Philly fans crying in their tears. I want your opinion on this because I was actually, and I can read the text messages to give you the real-time discussion I had with one of your radio hosts, Sal Licata, concerning the bullpen management in the 7th inning.
Okay.
So he asks me, how do you handle this? Who do you go to in these last 2 innings? This is when Tyler Rogers, because I think everything else was pretty explainable. So Brazoban comes in, gets through the 6th inning, only gives up a run. Tyler Rogers pitches the 1-2-3 7th inning. In the middle of that top of the 7th, he asks me, how do you handle this? And my response at the time was, all right, they have a 2-run lead. If it's still 2, I'd go to Helsley. And then if the tying run comes to the plate, or, I may not have that luxury because of the 3-batter minimum, or the 3-batter minimum, once that happens, either of the 2, I'll get him out of the game. But here's the pivot that I wrote to Sal. Once Rogers pitched a 1-2-3 inning and only threw 9 pitches, because remember, he got the first 2 outs on 2 pitches. I pivoted this and said, I start the inning with Rogers. And I play the same game, except I don't have to worry about the 3-batter minimum because he's already faced the amount of guys he needs to. And I'd go to Diaz. So I wasn't going clean 6-out save for Diaz, but I wanted somebody. First, it was Helsley, I admit. Then it was Rogers, based on the amount of pitches he threw, to at least piece together a few outs in the 8th. And then I'll go to Diaz for the 4 or the 5-out save. So I initially said Helsley, but my pivot was Tyler Rogers threw 9 pitches. And we've seen Rogers be able to get 4 or 5 outs. That is not unforeseen. So I didn't think it was crazy, especially with the rubber arm that he has, to say, hey, can Tyler Rogers go do it again? And that's exactly what I would have done. And obviously, Mendy didn't do it. He went to Ryan Helsley, which was my initial plan, but obviously changed based on Rogers' pitch allotment.
I would have done the same thing you were saying because the fact that he got 2 outs on 2 pitches, I'm like, dude, if this guy gets another out on a 3rd pitch, I may kiss him. I might run on the field and kiss him and say, dude, you do that again in the 8th, because we don't need that Helsley pressure anymore. Like, we don't. The connection should have been easy, Rogers to Diaz. And honestly, I swear, we'll get to Helsley in a second, but I thought that Helsley, after he walked the batter, I thought he had 2 outs for some stupid reason. I'm like, okay, good. Then just go to Diaz. I forgot that he only got 1 out.
Yeah.
Well, that was, dude, that was he sucks.
You think? Is that the conclusion you come up with?
That's what I got for you.
But I think if we're being fair about this, they really only had 3 options, okay? Choice number 1 is try to squeeze another out or 2 from Tyler Rogers, which is what I would have done because the pitch count was low. The other option, which I admit I initially wanted to do, was just go to Ryan Helsley and either the tying runs at the plate or 3-batter minimum. Obviously, those are kind of equivalent because it's a 2-run game. So he either faces 3 batters and gets through the inning, great. He faces 3 batters, there's a guy on base, I'm taking him out. He faces 3 batters, 2-run base, I'm definitely taking him out. And obviously the worst case scenario is everybody's on base or maybe all 3 runs score. Or go to Edwin Diaz for a 6-out save. I wasn't going to do the Diaz thing, but I think that because of the 3-batter minimum where you don't have the ability to let Helsley start the inning and, hey, as soon as there's a base runner, take him out, you manage yourself into a kind of an issue. So he goes to Helsley, which I wouldn't have done. I would have stuck with Rogers. We all made that clear. He's now in a spot where he had to face Harrison Bader. Like, we can't rip him for not taking him out. He couldn't take him out. The where you rip him, and I'm sorry, this is inexcusable, is once Bader hits the 2-run home run and Helsley has faced the 3 batters, there's no way you can keep him in the game. And what makes it worse, what just boggles my mind, I'm going to lose it right now, even though the Mets won. If Helsley puts a guy on, which is what he did, you're bringing in Diaz, who has one bugaboo. He can't hold me on base. So you knew that if Helsley was going to put another guy on, oh, great, I'll go to Edwin Diaz. Yeah, oh, great, that guy's stealing second, which is exactly what Bryson Stott did on the first pitch. So I know a lot of people are mostly going to be pissed about just going to Ryan Helsley. That is not my number one issue. My number one issue is keeping Helsley in after he gives up the Bader home run so that he puts another guy on base, and then you put Diaz in a spot where there's a base runner, which you cannot do. That, to me, was the most egregious decision Carlos Mendoza made. When Bader hits the home run, Helsley's got to be out of there.
Yeah, and again, the 3-batter minimum really kills us because I say with Helsley, you have to go batter to batter with him, but you can't because he's not starting the game.
I know.
It's terrible.
The 3-batter minimum adds a lot of it makes it difficult because if this was the old world, what I would have said was, I'll bring him in, I go batter to batter, and as soon as he puts a guy on base, I'm done with him. And so when he walks Castellanos, and look, it was a good at-bat by Nick, and Helsley did try to throw some fastballs right past him on 3-2, kind of knowing, hey, I can't walk him. But once he walks him, and he missed by 1.5 miles, I think it was a slider low and away. Yes, in a perfect world with no rules, I'm taking him out right then and there. So I would have stuck with Rogers. I was open to going to Helsley and giving him that opportunity, but keeping him in to face Bryson Stott was one of those moves that, I'm sorry, you just can't defend it.
All right, first of all, question. Because here's the thing, right? This is why I would have stayed with Rogers anyway, is because you were facing a really good part of the lineup. Like, not a good part, like a good part for the Mets. Like, they weren't facing Harper at that point in time. They weren't facing Schwarber at that point in time. They got there because freaking Helsley sucked. So then Diaz had to go face him, I believe, in that bottom half, the top of the 8th at that point in time. That being said, though, would you have elected? You saw that Helsley is already shaky. Would you have just intentionally walked Bader and call it a day and then pull him?
Oh, so that I see what you're saying. I know that sounds crazy off the top, but what Hoff is suggesting, and this is how bad Ryan Helsley is, as a way to get around the 3-batter minimum and not have the worst case scenario occur, which is Harrison Bader hitting a 2-run home run, would you just intentionally walk him knowing you're going to see the Phillies bench of Stott and Marsh coming up? The short answer is no. I mean, I appreciate your creativity on that because that is, it's a way to get around the 3-batter minimum. Like, all right, screw it. I think that Helsley ideally, and look, sports isn't ideal sometimes. After what happened the night before, where he pitches a shaky but okay, got it, 1, 2, 3 inning, and the whole dugout gives him back massages, the next spot for Helsley ideally would have been a 3-run lead. And the reason it would have been a 3-run lead is the margin for error before you pull him is a little different than a 2-run lead, where all they need is one base runner to get the tying run up. With a 3-run lead, the only way he's going to blow the game the way he did in this game is if the first 2 guys get on base and he gives up a 3-run home run. So I wish it wasn't a 2-run lead where you had less of a margin for error, which is why I think the lead only being 2, combined with Rogers only throwing 9 pitches, made Rogers squeezing out an out or 2 in the 8th inning and then handing it to Diaz. It made it make the most sense. And like we talked about, you also didn't have to worry about the minimum with Rogers since he had already faced 3 batters in the 7th inning. So I think the grand conclusion here is that as we're trying to slow walk Ryan Helsley back into a big spot, this was not the spot for it. It made more sense to go to Tyler Rogers. And now what I'm afraid of, Hoff, is I don't know what you do with Helsley, because they tried slowly to build his confidence back, and maybe Monday was a confidence booster, and then it gets absolutely slaughtered now. So what do you do with Ryan Helsley? Does he become a mop-up guy? And how many mop-up guys can you have? Ryan Stanek's already on this team. So I think that's the worry kind of leaving this game. There are pieces in this bullpen to like, but Ryan Helsley right now, I think, is becoming borderline unpitchable in a close game.
Well, do we? Let me ask you a serious question. Do we have enough arms in general? If a perfect scenario happened that a starting pitcher goes 6 innings, do you have enough pitchers to go 7, 8, 9? Do you have enough relief pitchers to do that if in a perfect world?
Well, so you're saying everybody's rested because obviously Game 3 of this series isn't going to feature that. Like half this bullpen is not going to be available.
I'm asking. It's you get 3 days off or whatever it is, the playoff start, or hey, it's game one of the season. We get a 6-inning pitch game by a starting pitcher, 7, 8, 9. Who are the guys you go to fresh bullpen?
So I think right now with a fresh bullpen, and this is a card subject to change based on the way guys pitch. I think the guy, first of all, Edwin Diaz is, I'm going to give him very high praise without going all the way with it. He is the closest thing we have seen in this town to be Mariano Rivera. He's not Mariano Rivera. That's what I want to make clear. He's not. When I say the closest, what I mean is he's better than Aroldis Chapman. He's better than David Robertson, even in his prime as a Yankee closer. He's better than even Jayris Familia, though he gave us some flashes, especially in 2015. Like in the decade in New York that we've had since the greatest closer has retired, the closest thing we have seen to that is this, okay? You can go to him in 8th innings the way Joe Torre used to do with Mariano. And here's the thing about Diaz. He's not perfect. Like, no one's going to suggest he is. He can absolutely blow a save tomorrow night. But he's not afraid of the moment. And the thing about the thing about Armando Benitez that scared me was he was a great closer who was afraid of the moment. I didn't trust him. I trust Edwin Diaz. And it doesn't mean he can't blow a game. Of course he can. But I also trust that he would then bounce back the next day, that this is no longer ever going to be a big mental issue for him. And he's also proven last year, this year, he can get 5 outs. He can get 6 outs. So on certain occasions, and definitely in the postseason, if the Mets are there with all the off days that are built in, you're damn right you're going to ask him to get 6 outs. I mean, why wouldn't you? Which is what Torre used to do with Mariano Rivera. And most teams will not do that with their closer. So Diaz is locked down. I think Brooks Raley has been 98% really good outside of the debacle against the Mariners last Friday. So I think he's up there. And I think obviously Tyler Rogers. So right now you've got those 3 relievers that you have a level of trust in. There's a big fall off after that. I mean, you don't trust Huáscar Brazoban or Jose Castillo, who may not be long for the roster anyway. I mean, Brazoban has options. Castillo may be DFA'd for a 5th time. And then you've got Ryan Stanek and Ryan Helsley, who you're like, I can't trust them. So that's the state of the Met bullpen in this moment.
Can I just tell you that in the bottom of the 9th, I think it was before bases were loaded, and the name Ryan Stanek popped up as warming in the bullpen.
Oh,
people in front of me started like freaking out.
When was that happening?
In the bottom of the 9th.
Okay. So it goes back to what we were saying, that if the Mets didn't win the game in the bottom of the 9th inning, and thank God they did, the chances of winning this thing at extra innings were remote because they only had 3 relievers available, one of which I don't think was available in Brooks Raley, Jose Castillo and Ryan Stanek. So the fact that they were able to put together that rally, and they put together the rally against Johan Duran, that's pretty badass. Here's a guy who I wanted on the Mets, you wanted on the Mets. We all were drooling over the idea of trading for this guy. And here's his first kind of entering into the Met-Philly rivalry. And he immediately gives up a base hit to Starling Marte. He gives up a base hit to Pete Alonso on like 3 pitches. I mean, it was basically immediate. Brett Baty, who only enters this game because of defense, but I got to admit, I love Mark Vientos. Baty versus Duran, I like the matchup better than Vientos versus Duran. Because A, the bunt was at least a thought. It was not going to be a thought if Mark Vientos was up. So I know that was only because of defense, but I got to admit, sometimes things work out and you're like, okay, this is not the worst possible scenario. I like the Baty matchup more so than the Vientos matchup. And Baty puts together this great at-bat and dunks one in the left field, and then Brandon Nimmo smokes one to get the job done. The fact that Duran couldn't get an out as his welcome to the Mets-Phillies rivalry was tremendous. And that's part of what made this such a fulfilling win, despite all the negatives that we've talked about.
I think Pat McCarthy said it, or I know he said it. I think he was the one who referenced it. I believe he said that was the first time ever that Duran didn't get an out in a game and gave up in 4 at-bats.
Wow.
Like back-to-back hits, game over. I think it's the first time ever in his career that happened to him. He's lights out, dude. We know it. And that's why that was scary when the Phillies did make that move for him. So, honestly, tip the cap to Brett Baty, though. He really did. I'm me, I'm a detractor of his. I believe in Vientos and Mauricio more, but it doesn't make a difference. He had a hell of an at-bat, and Brandon Nimmo after the game, too, that's what he did. He praised Brett Baty to the fans, to the crowd. Yeah, how wonderful an at-bat that was. And that
Brandon Nimmo's got some chutzpah, man, because he likes to tell people what to do. So a couple of things in these post-game interviews over the last 2 years. One, remember when he called the fans out and said, hey, can you guys show up for us?
Yeah.
Then he called out David Stearns and said, come on, it's some guys, And then he basically tells David Stearns tonight or last night, depending on when you're listening, you better not trade Brett Baty. He's going to be on this team for a long time. And as he said that, I'm like, yeah, is he? And that's not a knock on Brett Baty. It's more, I wouldn't be surprised if David Stearns trades him out of strength next season. That's on the table. But Brandon Nimmo's making demands. He's making demands. He's saying, hey, remember the name, Brett Baty. We ain't going to trade him. But hell of a victory. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read some of your emails. Do want to hear from you. And then we'll get to the Jonah Tong stuff. I mean, we've done the Rico for 45 minutes, and we have not addressed the fact that the Mets made the shocking decision on Tuesday morning to announce that they are calling up Jonah Tong, and he's going to make his Major League debut Friday night against the Miami Marlins. Edgar writes, hey, Evan, this is short and sweet, and I'm glad to see the Mets finally having some fight in them and punching back when they get hit in the mouth. Vientos is catching fire, and I feel he needs to be in the whole game. That stick should be in the lineup at all times. When Mendy took him out and put Brett Baty in, I wasn't happy because I felt that this spot was going to come up in a crucial moment, especially with Helsley being Devin Williams' number 2. No lead is safe getting to our true closer, Edwin Diaz. We got lucky this time. It didn't come back to bite us in the ass. So, Edgar, I'm going to disagree with you. Because number one, I think Brett Baty is a major upgrade defensively over Mark Vientos. I do think Mark has gotten better defensively. I give him credit. Brett Baty's a lot better. And in the 8th inning of a 2-run game, you got to prioritize defense. Now, here's the good thing. Because you turned out to be right that Vientos' spot in the order would come up in a big spot because Helsley blew the lead. But like I said earlier, it's not like the defensive replacement you're going to is, Tim Bogar. You know what I mean? You're going to a bat who so far this season has actually had a better year than Mark Vientos. Now, I know Vientos is hot recently, though Brett Baty is hot depending on when you want to start kind of the stretch of games that he's been on. So you're not downgrading yourself that much but you are upgrading yourself a lot defensively. The other day, I hate to bring up the Yankees, but I want to give you kind of an analogy where I would agree with you. So the Yankees are playing the Red Sox on Sunday night, and Giancarlo Stanton is a beast. I mean, the guy is, there's one fan base you don't have to sell Giancarlo Stanton to. It's Met fans, okay? We appreciate Giancarlo Stanton more than Yankee fans do because all the guy's ever done is murder us. And he is a tremendous head. Obviously, he's been on fire for the Yankees. So on Sunday night, they took him out of the game for defense. But his spot in the lineup was due the next inning. And they brought in Anthony Volpe. Was Anthony Volpe, you know what? I actually scored that game. I could give you the exact answer of who it was, whose spot was going to come up. It was, believe it or not, it was actually Paul Goldschmidt. Okay? So it was not Anthony Volpe. And I like Goldie. I'm not trying to kill him here. And David Cohn brought up the point. How much better is the defense you're getting in right field than the fact that you're taking Stanton's bat out of the lineup, who's guaranteed to have an at-bat one inning later? In that case, I get it. But in this case, I have a 2-run lead, and unless I blow the lead, I'm not getting an at-bat from Mark Vientos, who I'm taking out. And oh, by the way, the guy taking the at-bat instead of Vientos is just as good, or at least this season has been just as good. So, respectfully disagree with you. Leon writes, can we try Ryan Helsley left-handed? Dan writes, this must be what it's like for a Braves fan when they see the Mets coming to town. And he includes this stat. The Philadelphia Phillies have a record of 60-82 against 2009. So, in short, at Citi Field, the Philadelphia Phillies are 60-82, which is crazy. And I do agree with that, Dan. Being on the other side of an ownage, I'm not that confident, though. Like, a part of me thinks, like, the Phillies are a good team. I'm not drooling over a Mets-Phillies series thinking, oh, we own them, we're going to smoke them. I don't buy that. I made that point a lot on the Fan the other day concerning Yankees-Red Sox. Like, I don't think an ownage of another team lasts forever. Especially when I think the talent level on the two teams are very close. James writes very simply, Edwin Diaz is so awesome. He is. Alex writes, Evan, awesome win. This win to me is not about the division, which I still think is out of reach, but beating Philadelphia again, giving them hope, and then decapitating their golden boy Durant. This win is about being in Phillies' heads the rest of the season. Looking forward to watching McClain and Tong this week and never hearing Hell's Bells again. They cannot play Hell's Bells again. I know they did it on Tuesday. They did it on Monday. Until Ryan Helsley can get back to being, competent, you cannot be playing this song. Can't do it. Now, let me get to Nolan McClain before I get to Jonathan. Nolan McClain is on the mound in the finale of this series. Mets are going to face Taijuan Walker. I'm very excited because it's my first chance to see Nolan McClain live. I was not at his major league debut against the Mariners last Saturday. So selfishly, I am pumped up to see Nolan McClain pitch. But I think this is a great opportunity to give you a pick. I've been on fire with my picks. 2 out of 3. I unfortunately got my Kodai Senga pick right the other day, but I've got a new one for you. And this pick segment is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Nolan McClain has an over-under on strikeouts at just 4.5, which is a very low number. He struck out 8 in his major league debut. He struck out 7 in his following start. So obviously he is a big strikeout pitcher. I am clearly going to take the over on Nolan McClain's strikeouts, which sits at just 4.5 on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Once again, that was my pick segment brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. As far as Jonah Tong is concerned, pleasantly surprised. I didn't see it coming. I think it's a testament to a few things. It's a testament to the kid himself. I mean, this guy has had a marvelous season down at AA. He gets called up to AAA a couple of weeks ago, has not given up an earned run in the 2 starts that he's made. And I think, and Carlos Mendoza said as much, This is the case of a young player basically saying, you can't keep me in the minor leagues anymore. I am so good. I am so dominant. And I am so ready for the challenge that if you don't call me up, you're doing yourself a disservice. And so a testament to Tong and what he's done, the hard work he's put into this to make the jump from AA to AAA, now to the major leagues. Kudos to Jonah Tong. It kind of shows you that Brandon Sproat, who I think was above both Tong and McLean on the depth chart of young guys who may come up and contribute to this rotation, it hasn't been the greatest year for Sproat. It hasn't been the worst year for Sproat, but clearly these two guys have passed him. Now, I still think Brandon Sproat's going to be here. I think he's definitely a guy you have to keep an eye on, maybe to be used out of the bullpen. David Stearns made the comment the other day that they did it in Milwaukee, and that when you get to this point of the season, you've got to put your best 14 pitchers on the roster. And by 14, after September 1st. Well, let me ask you guys a question, and this goes back to something Hoff asked about the bullpen. If you had to pick the best 14 pitchers to be on the Met roster, forget starter, forget reliever, because you can mix and match. At this point, when Jose Castillo is on your team, when Ryan Stanek is on your team, when Ryan Helsley is on your team, don't you think Jonah Tong and even Brandon Sproat are going to end up as one of the 14 best options to pitch for the New York Mets? The answer is yes. And if you're David Stearns, you got nothing to lose. These guys are highly regarded prospects. If they struggle, I don't think it's going to kill their value, nor is it going to kill their confidence. And I think it's better to do it now than September 20th. It's better to do it now than the BS we saw from Billy Epler a few years ago, where here's Francisco Alvarez set to play in Atlanta as the Mets are battling for the division. You call Tong up in a spot in which, let's be honest, there's not that much pressure on him. The Mets are playing better baseball. We'll see what they do over the course of the next day or two, because they've got 2 games before Tong pitches, but he's not being called up to be a savior. Nolan McLean almost felt like he was being called up to be a savior, fair or not. They needed him. And as of right now, the start he made a Saturday and a half ago against the Mariners feels like the turning point of the season. You can tell me all you want about the microphones in the Alec Boehm situation. The Met turnaround this season has not been a mascot. It hasn't been a social media star. The turnaround of the 2025 New York Mets is Nolan effing McLean. Jonah Tong doesn't have that pressure. He's being added to this rotation because God knows the Mets need a 6th starter. And the opportunity's right there to never relinquish a spot. Because I think what David Stearns has shown us over a year and a half, and he's not been perfect. The Ryan Helsley trade is looking like Billy Taylor 2.0. I mean, it's looking like a disaster. Nobody is suggesting David Stearns is perfect. But what he has shown you over the last year and a half is he'll make the hard decisions to try to win. Remember when he DFA'd a free agent signing a month after signing him and Joey Wendell? Remember when he shipped Frankie Montas to the bullpen despite paying him $17 million a year? And do you remember them finally calling up both Nolan McLean and Jonah Tong? If Jonah Tong and his deceptive windup goes out and deals against the Marlins, I got a newsflash for you. He's going to get another start. You pitch well, you'll keep your spot in the rotation. And as far as, well, then what happens? Do they go 6-man? Do they move this guy to the bullpen? Here's my answer to that. Chill. Everything will take care of itself if guys like that are pitching well. The decision will be easy. But Tyler McGill has looked good at AAA. I think Sproat will be up here. I think McGill's going to be up here. Obviously, Tong is getting his shot on Friday. And we'll see how they're going to mix and match this. We could still see a scenario where Clay Holmes ends up back in the bullpen, as we've talked about a lot this season. We could see a scenario where Sean Manaea ends up in the bullpen. Would it stun anybody if we see a scenario where Kodai Senga is on the injured list? But I absolutely love and appreciate the fact that David Stearns said, you know what? We got a kid in AAA, before that AA, who is dominating. and he's making it impossible for us to keep him off this roster. And Friday night becomes a must-go-to or must-watch game as this kid makes his major league debut against the Marlins. But before we get to that, take care of business. Nolan McLean in the finale of this series against the Philadelphia Phillies, take care of business. And we'll see if the Mets can do that. We appreciate all the emails, thericob@gmail.com. We'll do a mailbag episode coming up where we'll go heavy on your emails, but we always appreciate the interactions. We'll have our Rico series recap coming up. I'd say about an hour or so after Wednesday night's game ends. I'll be going to the game. And let me give some advice to Hoff, because I follow this all the time. When you take a kid to the game and you got to worry about them peeing or going to the bathroom. So I'm taking my youngest to the game tomorrow night. Spence, the star of the Rico Brogna. Spence is going to Citi Field. Now, he's 4, Pete. He's going to have to pee a lot. So let me teach you something. And as a dad, you got to be all over this. You should know this already. It's called preemptive peeing.
Well, let me tell you something. I get it. We should play. I thought I planned well enough, but when you have 6 kids with you,
that is uncontrollable. I agree with that. 6 is too much. I could not handle that. But like my foot, and I got to time this out because I really want to watch Nolan McLean pitch, but I also have to prioritize. My son wants to go to Kiddie Field. He's going to want his ice cream.
Yes.
So this is how weird things are with pitching and how I'm obsessed with it. When the Mets are batting is when I'm going to want to run to Kiddie Field with Spence. When McLean is pitching, it's like, nah, we're going to be in the seat. But what I do is I take him to Kiddie Field in the 3rd inning. We're going to go to the bathroom on the way over. And then we're going to go to the bathroom on the way out. And then when we get the ice cream, Spence, you got to go. You don't have to go. Yes, you do have to go. Just to make sure that in the 9th inning, when the bases are loaded with 2 outs, I don't get that dreaded tap on the shoulder that says, Dad, I got to pee. Preemptive peeing.
Preemptive peeing. I will tell you this much, though. When the Mets have bases loaded in a game, the bathrooms are empty. So that is a good time to go.
That is true. That is very, very true. I guess that's a positive. Bases are loaded, bathrooms empty. Anyhow, we appreciate you downloading episode 537 of the Rico Brogna. We'll have our series recap. It'll air live about an hour after the game ends on Thursday, or you can download it wherever you download your podcast. Remember to subscribe to Rico Brogna so you never miss an episode. Thank you very much for downloading this walk-off edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.